The sun beat down like a blacksmith's hammer on an anvil as I rode into Harmony Creek. My name's Jedediah Jed Stone, and I'm a freight hauler. Been crossing these plains my whole life, delivering everything from flour to fancy hats. Today, it was mostly lumber and some medical supplies for Doc Adams, who, word had it, was getting too old for this town's particular brand of ailments. The air was thick with dust, the kind that coats your throat and makes you cough up grit for a week. A lazy wind rustled the dry grass by the roadside, carrying the scent of horse sweat and stale whiskey from the saloon. Harmony Creek wasn't much different from 100 other towns I'd seen. A main street, a general store, a blacksmith, and a church whose steeple leaned a bit to the west. But there was a tension in the air today, thicker than the dust. Folks were gathered in small knots, whispering, their gazes darting towards the grand two-story house that served as the mayor's office. Usually, by this time of day, the streets would be bustling with farmers bringing their goods to market or kids chasing stray dogs. Not today. I steered my wagon, a sturdy, worn contraption pulled by two equally sturdy, worn mules, towards the livery stable. As I pulled up, a young stable hand, barely old enough to shave, hurried over. "Mornin', Jed," he mumbled, his eyes wide. "Heard you were comin'." "Looks like a wake, son," I said, hopping down and stretching my creaky knees. "What's got everyone so riled?" He glanced around nervously. "It's the governor's daughter. She arrived this morning, and she ain't happy." Now that caught my attention. The governor's daughter, Eleanor Vance, was a name whispered with a mix of awe and trepidation across the territories. Not for her beauty, though she was said to possess a striking one, but for her sharp mind and even sharper tongue. She was known to be her father's right hand, a force of nature in her own right. I'd heard stories of her cutting down corrupt officials with nothing but words and undeniable facts. I hitched my mules and started unloading the lumber. The stable hand, still jumpy, helped me. "They say she's here about the new rail line," he continued, keeping his voice low. "Mayor Thompson, he's been dragging his feet on the right-of-way agreements. Folks are starting to wonder if he's got something to hide." Mayor Thompson. A portly man with a booming laugh and a handshake that could crush walnuts. He'd been mayor of Harmony Creek for as long as anyone could remember. Seemed like a decent enough fellow, always had a kind word and a cigar to offer. But even a blind squirrel finds a nut, and sometimes even the most genial of men can have a few skeletons rattling in their closet. As I finished with the lumber, a small crowd started to gather outside the mayor's office. Curiosity, as it always does, got the better of me. I figured I'd deliver Doc Adams' supplies and then circle back. But before I could even head that way, a voice, clear and cutting through the dusty air like a silver bell, rang out. "Mayor Thompson!" My head snapped up. Standing on the porch of the mayor's office was a woman. She was tall, elegantly dressed, in a riding habit that seemed out of place in this dusty town, and her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun. Her chin was held high, and her eyes, even from where I stood, seemed to pierce through the very soul of the man she addressed. This had to be Eleanor Vance. Mayor Thompson, looking noticeably paler than usual, emerged from his office, wiping his brow with a silk handkerchief. He tried to offer a conciliatory smile, but it looked more like a grimace. "Miss Vance," he began, his voice a little too jovial. "To what do we owe the pleasure of this unexpected visit?" Eleanor didn't flinch. "The pleasure, Mayor, is all yours. I believe you have some explaining to do regarding the land deeds for the new rail line." The crowd grew, pressing closer, sensing the storm about to break. I leaned against a hitching post, suddenly more interested in this drama than the state of Doc Adams's rheumatism. The air crackled with anticipation, and the only sound was the distant caw of a crow and the pounding of my own heart. This wasn't just a delivery run anymore. This was history in the making. The air crackled with anticipation, and the only sound was the distant caw of a crow and the pounding of my own heart. This wasn't just a delivery run anymore. This was history in the making. What bombshell do you think Eleanor Vance is about to drop? The silence after Eleanor Vance's declaration was deafening. Mayor Thompson, usually so composed, visibly faltered. He cleared his throat, his eyes darting around the growing crowd, seeking any sign of support. There was none. Only eager, expectant faces. "Miss Vance," he stammered, "I assure you there have been no irregularities. The land deeds are being processed as per protocol." His voice, usually so robust, was now thin and reedy. Eleanor Vance took a step forward, her gaze unwavering. "Protocol, Mayor? Is it protocol to undervalue prime rail line property and then purchase it through shell companies registered to your distant relatives?" A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. This wasn't just a discussion about paperwork, it was an accusation of corruption. The murmurs intensified, and some of the townsfolk started exchanging knowing glances. It seemed I wasn't the only one who hadn't heard the full story. Mayor Thompson's face flushed crimson. "Preposterous! These are baseless accusations, Miss Vance. Slander! Slander!" Eleanor pulled a roll of papers from her satchel. "These are copies of your signed purchase agreements, Mayor, along with bank statements showing transfers to accounts linked directly to your wife's cousin in Topeka. Funny how his cattle ranch suddenly started dealing in real estate, isn't it?" She unfurled the documents, and though I couldn't make out the details from where I stood, the sheer volume of them spoke volumes. The mayor's bluster withered. He looked like a man caught with his hand in the cookie jar, and a very large cookie jar at that. He wiped his brow again, and this time his hand trembled. You have no right to pry into my personal affairs," he sputtered. "When your personal affairs interfere with the progress of this state and the welfare of its citizens, Mayor, then I have every right," Eleanor retorted, her voice gaining strength with each word. "The governor has made it clear that the rail line is vital for the growth of these territories. Your obstructionism, fueled by personal greed, is unacceptable." A few people in the crowd started to nod in agreement. Old Man Hemmings, who ran the general store, even let out a soft "hump" of approval. It was clear that the mayor's popularity, if it ever truly existed beyond his pleasant demeanor, was evaporating faster than a puddle in July. "Furthermore," Eleanor continued, her voice rising to address the entire crowd, "the governor's office has received numerous complaints regarding inflated taxes and unfair land assessments under your administration, Mayor Thompson. Property values have plummeted for honest citizens, while certain but well-connected individuals have seen their fortunes inexplicably rise. Now, this hit close to home for many. I'd heard whispers of folks losing their homesteads over questionable tax debts, and suddenly the dots were starting to connect. The mayor's friendly smiles began to look less like benevolence and more like a carefully crafted mask. "I can explain all of this," Mayor Thompson practically shrieked, desperate now. "There have been misunderstandings, clerical errors, nothing more." Eleanor looked at him, her expression one of utter disdain. "There is no misunderstanding, Mayor, only a clear pattern of deceit and self-enrichment at the expense of Harmony Creek. My father, the governor, has authorized me to rectify this situation immediately." She paused, letting her words hang in the air, heavy with consequence. The silence that followed was even more potent than before. All eyes were on her, waiting. Then, with a finality that echoed through the street, she delivered the crushing blow. "Effective immediately, Mayor Thompson, you are hereby relieved of your duties. The governor has no confidence in your ability to lead this town, and your actions have proven you unfit for public office." The gasp that followed was louder this time, a collective exhalation of shock and, for some, relief. Mayor Thompson staggered back, looking utterly defeated, his face ashen. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. He simply stood there, a broken man, as the crowd a mix of astonishment and dawning understanding on their faces, watched his reign crumble. The dust of Harmony Creek had just witnessed a revolution, and I, Jedediah Stone, was right in the middle of it. He simply stood there, a broken man, as the crowd, a mix of astonishment and dawning understanding on their faces, watched his reign crumble. The dust of Harmony Creek had just witnessed a revolution, and I, Jedediah Stone, was right in the middle of it. But what does this mean for Harmony Creek's future? And what role will Jedediah play in the new order? The firing of Mayor Thompson sent ripples through Harmony Creek. For a few moments after Eleanor Vance's pronouncement, the main street was eerily silent, as if the very air held its breath. Then, a slow, tentative murmur began to build, swelling into a wave of hushed conversations. Some folks were shocked, others looked grimly satisfied, and a few even offered a hesitant cheer. Mayor Thompson, a crumpled figure on his own porch, was quickly ushered away by a couple of hushed deputies, his usual bluster replaced by a defeated silence. Eleanor Vance, however, remained resolute. She addressed the now more active crowd, her voice clear and strong. "The governor will appoint an interim mayor within the week. In the meantime, I will personally oversee the initial audit of the town's accounts and ensure the proper continuation of the rail line project." She paused, her gaze sweeping over the faces before her. Harmony Creek deserves leadership that works for its people, not against them. This is a new beginning. As the crowd began to disperse, still buzzing with the day's events, I realized I still had Doc Adams' supplies to deliver. I untied my mules and headed down the street, my mind replaying the scene. It was a stark reminder of the power of truth and the courage it takes to wield it. This wasn't some fanciful tale. This was raw, unfiltered reality playing out on a dusty street in the American West. I found Doc Adams in his small, cluttered office, peering over a pair of spectacles at a medical journal. He was a gruff but kind man, and his office always smelled faintly of antiseptic and old books. "Afternoon, Doc," I said, wheeling in the crate of supplies. "Got your order?" He looked up, his bushy eyebrows raised. "Jedediah, heard quite the ruckus. Out there, did old Thompson finally get his comeuppance?" "You could say that, Doc. Governor's daughter rode into town and fired him on the spot. Had the proof right there in her hands." Doc Adams let out a low whistle. "Well, knew that man was too slick for his own good. Always suspected he had his fingers in more pies than he let on." He watched as I carefully stacked the crates. "Good on her, I say. Takes a lot of grit for a woman, especially one of her standing, to come into a place like this and clean house." We talked for a while longer, about the future of Harmony Creek, the possibilities the rail line would bring, and the hope that honest leadership might finally prevail. Doc Adams, usually a man of few words outside of medical diagnoses, seemed genuinely hopeful. As I left Doc's office, the sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. The dust had settled, both literally and figuratively. Harmony Creek was still Harmony Creek, but something fundamental had shifted. The air felt lighter, a sense of opportunity replacing the previous unspoken tension. I made my way back to the livery stable to make sure my mules were settled for the night. The young stable hand from earlier was still there, diligently mucking out stalls. He looked at me, a new kind of wonder in his eyes. "You really saw it, Jed?" he asked, his voice hushed. "The governor's daughter, firing the mayor." I nodded. "Saw. It plain as day, son, a real sight to behold." He grinned, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Guess things are going to be different around here now." "Maybe so," I said, looking out at the darkening street. "Maybe so. The road ahead for Harmony Creek wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, no doubt, but for the first time in a long time, it felt like the town was heading in the right direction. As for me, Jedediah Stone, I'd deliver my next load. watch the sunrise on another day, and keep hauling my freight across these vast, unpredictable lands. But I'd carry the memory of that day in Harmony Creek with me, a testament to the fact that even in the dustiest corners of the West, justice sometimes finds a way to ride into town. But I'd carry the memory of that day in Harmony Creek with me, a testament to the fact that even in the dustiest corners of the West, justice sometimes finds a way to ride into town. What other forgotten tales from the Old West are waiting to be unearthed? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more untold stories.